Welcome to Fantasy Football Live here on Yahoo Sports. It is time. All the weeks of debating roster decisions, talking trash with your league mates, grinding those waiver wires, trying to make the perfect trade. It all comes down to this. The fantasy football playoffs are here. No Jason Fitz, so I'm jumping in the host chair today. I'm Matt Harmon. I'm here with Chris Allen and Justin Boone. Boone, how are we feeling today, man? We've got a quarterback in your age bracket actually starting a game here. So that is a thing that's happening here in Week 15.
Yeah, this is probably the last time that there will be a player in the NFL who is older than me, so I have to cherish this weekend for sure. But I also want to say, I think Fitz not being here, there's a reason for it, guys. We got an announcement later in the show about a certain contest that we do, and I don't think he wanted to be here for that announcement, so I think he's ducking us today.
I couldn't agree more. We will definitely get to that later. My conspiracy theory radar is up on why Fitz is not joining us, even though, yes, he's allegedly sick, but we will get to that later. Chris Allen, the question of the day, can you mark yourself safe from Kyle Pitts' historic, and I do mean historic, the most fantasy points scored by a tight end since at least the year 2000 in a game? Can you mark yourself safe from the Kyle Pitts debacle of Thursday, or did you play him in any lineups this week?
I did play him in a lineup, so I'm actually happy to say that I survived, but I thrived with Kyle Pitts performing so well as he did on Thursday night. And I thought the theme of this weekend is essentially all of the teams that are now more or less crashing out because their squads aren't essentially going to be in the playoff hunt, or especially for Bucks, they're kind of scrambling to see if they're going to be in that spot. And that's why the QB wins is up on the board this week, because once we get to this point in the season where things aren't looking as great as you thought they were going into this season back in August and September, that's the thing that a lot of folks try to fall back on as well. My quarterback is better than your quarterback because of all the quarterback wins they've got. And I'm sitting back here looking at a lot of them because of seeing how the Bengals have played or not played, like that James Franco meme, like first time, seeing how poorly your team has played in the bright lights. So I completely understand how folks are coming into Week 15, but no, we still got something to play for and help folks set their rosters for the fantasy playoffs.
No doubt about it, and that's what we're going to be here doing for the next 90 minutes. We're here to help you get those lineups set, deal with all of the madness of this given week. You can get involved by using the hashtag AskFFL on Twitter, X, to send in your last-minute roster questions. Drop a comment in the YouTube chat below. We are going to be checking that all day. So we're 90 minutes away from kickoff, so let's look at the injury updates here. We got the actives and inactives in the early games. We've got inactive Nick Chubb. Woody Marks will be getting a bump there for sure. Rome Odunze stressing me out personally. Do I play this guy or do I not? Well, he is going to be on the football field. He's active with that foot injury that he's been playing through. Deebo Samuel, he's active for the Commanders, but same on that Commanders offense here. Chris Rodriguez inactive, so maybe Bill Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt is back in our lives. We'll discuss that later. Speaking of the later games here, got some questionable tags you might want to be paying attention to. Josh Jacobs sounds like he is expected to play. Same for Christian McCaffrey and Devontae Adams. So feels like you can probably count on those guys to be on the football field here in Week 15. And let's get into what to watch in Week 15. Chris Allen, what do you have your eye on here in this slate of games?
So it was the last set of buys that we've got. So I'm going to talk about 4 quarterbacks with some time to reset. So I'll talk about 3 now and 1 later. Bryce Young is the first one I'll get to. And the Panthers, they've got a shot after the Bucks blew their cannons a little too early to become the unquestioned leaders of the NFC South. And after watching their performance against the Rams heading into the bye, I can see this happening for Carolina. And part of it is having an effective rushing attack on early downs, where we saw Chuba Hubbard, Rico Dowdle, plus 50% on early down rushing success rate against those LA Rams, but the offense still required Young to do his part. I mean, Harmon, you and I talked about it shortly after that game. Young was nails on third down and in obvious passing situations, 60% passing success rate, 10 attempts, 8 completions, 3 touchdowns. Now, I'm not expecting the same number of explosive plays, but listening to head coach Dave Canales talking about acknowledging play calling tendencies. And a shout out to Eric Eager, who used to be in these social media streets, trying to adjust and from an analytical standpoint, how they call plays with all the rest of it. I mean, so that we could see the Panthers keep pounding this week after such a strong performance just a couple of weeks ago. But now for Brock Purdy, I mean, last week, it definitely seemed like a much needed rest after having Myles Garrett Garrett or someone from Cleveland in his face on over half of his dropbacks. But still, it'll be a month after he's come back from the turf toe injury, and the results have been, let's say, uneven. I mean, he threw 3 picks against Carolina in prime time. He's been under 200 passing yards in 2 straight games. And outside of his 2-yard scamper to get into the end zone against the Browns, his sneaky upside as a scrambler just hasn't been there. But the Titans defense, they've turned into something of a pass funnel. I mean, they've allowed over 225 passing yards in 6 straight games and multi-touchdown results in 6 of 7 games. And I'm sorry, I hate doing the 6-7 thing, but my kids told me to do it. I'm so sorry for that. But either way, the last one I want to talk about is Drake Maye. And I think that game has probably the most intrigue for Drake Maye facing off against Josh Allen, because Josh Allen's riding high after beating, I can't remember who the Bills played last week. But anyway, Maye sits at second in the MVP race behind Matthew Stafford. And he's thrown for 250 passing yards in 6 straight games. And Maye has generated the 6th most EPA as a rusher. But I think it's fair to say, after the schedule of the Giants, the Jets, the Falcons, the Browns, the Bucks, and even some other team that they played against, again, I can't remember, they haven't played anyone to make Maye a worthy MVP candidate. But if he can sweep Superman, New England fans might be calling for Josh Allen to leave his cape in Foxborough. So that's what I'm looking for here in Week 15.
I just have to say, this show has been on the air for 20 years, which is incredible. I've been on the show for 8 years now, a part of it in some variety, which is also kind of alarming. But the Bucks blew their cannons a little early. That's got to be my favorite line that's ever been said on this show. So well done, Chris Allen. That was absolutely fantastic. One of my favorite wide receiver storylines this season is Christian Watson and his play this year. Again, it is one of the most enjoyable stories in wide receiver land this season. Since he returned in Week 8, Christian Watson ranks 12th among wide receivers in yards per route run versus man coverage. He has caught 4 touchdowns against man coverage so far this season. I think this really explains the development that we've seen from Watson, a guy who tore his ACL in January of this calendar year, and yet he is playing the best football of his career, and I don't even think it's close here in the year 2025. It's just outrageous the way this guy is playing right now. He's winning in contested catches, and that man coverage note is important here because this is not a guy who has always been a consistent route runner, a consistent separator. This year, I think you're really seeing him put it in the box score and put it on film this year, and his play against man coverage is a critical note here as he prepares to play one of the most man-heavy defenses in the NFL. This is obviously a tough matchup here, and he has been playing so well, he's probably going to draw shadow coverage from Patrick Surtain, which is not something I had on my bingo card for Christian Watson this year, being so good that one of the best cornerbacks, the reigning defensive player of the year, has to track him around the football field. But I think that's going to happen here. And yet Watson is playing at such a high level, and he's doing it against man coverage. And if he gets a couple of routes in the slot, he gets a couple of routes against Riley Moss, he is one of those guys that just needs a single play to make his day. So yes, the risk is a little bit higher with Watson than it normally would be this week, but I just can't get him outside of my top 20 to 24 wide receivers just based on that statistic, how well he has been playing. Be ready to accept some volatility here, but I think you do risk Christian Watson in your lineups regardless of the tough matchup. Boone, what do you have your eye on here heading into Week 15?
I think this is the toughest storyline to figure out this week for fantasy, and it's what's going to happen when the Texans go up against this Cardinals offense. Are the Texans going to be the ones that finally shut down Jacoby Brissett? He has been a top 12 fantasy quarterback every single start so far, and everyone loves Michael Wilson in their lineup right now. He's been absolutely going off with Marvin Harrison Jr. on the sidelines. But now they go up against the Texans, and this is just a whole different animal, right? Like this defense has been shutting down good quarterbacks, bad quarterbacks, everyone they've faced. They're allowing the fewest passing touchdowns, the 5th fewest passing yards on the season, the 3rd fewest fantasy points to wide receivers on the year. It's even worse lately. Like in their last 7 games, only 2 wide receivers have topped 55 yards against them. Only 1 wide receiver has caught more than 5 passes on them during that span. So I was telling you guys before the show, This is the ranking this week that I have the most trouble with, and that's Michael Wilson at wide receiver 13. I'm sort of cheating there by putting him in the wide receiver 2 range. I want to put him as a top 12 guy. I really do. I want to believe, but I could see this go in any direction. And normally when we get to Sunday morning like this, I've been doing research all week. I feel very good about my projections, about my rankings. This is one in particular where I do not. And that's separate from Jacoby Brissett, who I think he is going to have a tough spot here, but he's going to throw a ton of passes still to Michael Wilson because he has to. They don't have that much else there. It's Trey McBride and it is Michael Wilson in this passing game. And we just have to hope that Michael Wilson continues to be Jerry Rice and Randy Moss and this incredible fantasy asset for us, even in the face of the best defense in the league at the moment.
What a statement that, if you told yourself back in August that you'd be saying, man, I can't quite get him into wide receiver 1 range. I can only get him at wide receiver 13. And that feels like disrespect to the great Michael Wilson. Again, what a time we are living in here. Speaking of Boone's rankings, he is our resident rankings expert. So we're going to send him into the bunker to get those final tweaks in before kickoff. He's going to be back later in the show to break all those down shortly. But now let's get to some last minute pickups here, Chris. Let's talk about some players that are under 50% roster that can be added before kickoff and potentially thrown right into your lineup. I'll get us started here. Isaiah Likely, Ravens tight end, is widely available. He is rostered in just 18% of leagues, and I think he is a viable punt play. I'm sorry to pick on your Bengals defense, but I'm going to do it here once again. Tight ends going against the Bengals. It's been one of the cheat codes of the entire season. They can lock down wide receivers on the outside. They did it to Zay Flowers last time they played, and yet it was Isaiah Likely who was going off against this Bengals defense, and I think he's got a shot to do it again. Since week 12, Likely has run a route on 53% of the Ravens dropbacks. He's been targeted on 26% of those routes. Second on the team with 15 looks, 10 catches, and again, he almost had a fantastic day. He had a good game, but he almost had a fantastic day in each of the last 2 weeks. Against the Bengals on Thursday night, he fumbles at the goal line. If he walks that touchdown in, we're having a very different conversation about both Likely, the fantasy player, and Lamar Jackson, what he did in that game. And then we saw last week against the Pittsburgh Steelers, he may be caught depending on what region of the country you live in. What is a catch? We don't even know. We can't agree on that. We're so divided. We can't agree on what a catch is. That looked like a catch to me. That should have been a touchdown, but it wasn't, and yet he still had a pretty solid fantasy day. So I think Likely is a guy that if you're struggling at tight end right now, you can pick up off the waiver wire, and you can just throw him right into your lineup and feel pretty good about the projection against the Cincinnati Bengals. Chris, who are you looking at that people can add off the waiver wire and potentially get into their lineups or maybe just stash down the stretch?
So at least for this week, I'm looking at wide receiver Jayden Higgins for the Houston Texans. And I'd say for this one, I'm banking a bit more on the game environment for this one, but I'll still go with the rookie here because we as fantasy managers, and I think the Texans in general to some extent, have been looking for that complement to Nico Collins. And it looks like they found something, at least one of the Iowa State wide receivers that they drafted. Higgins has mostly played at that flanker position on the outside, but in the 2 games with CJ Stroud back under center, Higgins has matched Collins in targets in obvious passing situations, and he's second in looks when Stroud has been under pressure, and he's come up with most of the receptions in those circumstances. And Arizona's defense, they'll be without 3 defenders in their secondary, so while Nico Collins will likely garner most of the focus, and rightly so, I mean, the wide receiver 2s have performed well against the Cardinals over the last few weeks. I mean, even a limited Devontae Adams got 6 targets against them last week. Chris Godwin went 5 for 78. Didn't get in the box, though, when Emeka Egbuka got 8 targets when they played the Bucs. And of course, both Jaguars scored as well against the Cardinals. So I would say with the usage, and again, also that game environment going up against the Cardinals, I would say Higgins slots into a potential, let's say, mid to high end wide receiver 3 for week 15.
Makes complete sense to me. I really like the way the Texans have been using Jayden Higgins. We know what you all out there are saying. Enough of these guys yapping about this, that, and the other. We need to get your lineup questions in. So let's hop into the chat room. Let's check the chat here. Our first one comes in from Tong Shanks 28. Pick one in a full PPR. Ladd McConkey versus Kansas City or Jacoby Myers versus Green Bay. Chris, I'm throwing this one to you because this is a tough question, and I don't want to answer it. So you're going to get all the hard ones here in this segment, buddy. So buckle in. Ladd McConkey, Quentin Johnson not playing in this game. He is inactive. We're going to talk about that in the later window, later on during the show. But Ladd McConkey, Jacoby Myers, which one are you going with here in Week 15?
I could have sworn Jacoby Myers was playing against the Jets today. I thought the Jags are playing the Jets, so maybe I'm missing something here. But either way, if I'm thinking about the right Jacoby, I would prefer Jacoby Myers against the Jets just because of where he's been moving around the formation, also being used on the interior. Do I like Ladd McConkey going up against the Chiefs? Absolutely, because we have seen a bit of the injuries now for the Chiefs. I believe it's like Trent McDuffie's questionable for that game, but even still, I think Chris Jones could leave Herbert in enough of a bind that I would prefer at least the safer floor of Jacoby Myers targets versus, I would say, the potential explosive passes we could get from Ladd McConkey in this game.
Yeah, I Ron Burgundy to that one. I just read straight off the question and didn't question it. And you know, to be fair to Tong Shanks, Jacoby's played for 2 teams this year, so maybe there can be a little bit of confusion on that one. Let's get to our friend here. Coastal Elite says, welcome to the playoffs. Which 2 of these 3 to start in a full PPR? Zay Flowers at Cincinnati, Quinshon Judkins at Chicago, or Christian Watson in the Denver Broncos? In the crosshairs of that secondary here. Let's talk about these 3 here. I'll take this one. I think you're going Quinshon Judkins, and I think you're going Christian Watson. Zay Flowers talked about it just a minute ago. I know that, yes, he would have had the touchdown had it not been for kind of a ticky-tacky offensive pass interference against the Bengals last time they played. But this is the trend with the Bengals defense. They'll shut down your wide receiver 1. They will take that player away. He had 7 targets, didn't do much with it last time these 2 teams matched up. It was the tight ends. It was the running backs. That's who eats against Cincinnati. I think this is a close call, but that alone is enough to break the tie here in favor of Judkins with a banged up offensive line for sure, and Christian Watson in another tough matchup. I just like the way those 2 guys project in their matchups a little bit better than Zay Flowers here. Let's get to the next one. This is KJ Frederick 838. What's up, my guys? Need some help. Better quarterback start, Bo Nix or Aaron Rodgers? I mean, the 2 low ADOT kings here, Chris. Which way are we going in Week 15?
I know it's going to be kind of crazy to say, but I think I'm leaning Aaron Rodgers in this one with how well the Packers defense has been, not just from a pass rush standpoint, Micah Parsons and company putting a ton of opposing quarterbacks under duress, but also they've played pretty good defense in their secondary and on the back end of that, Keyshawn Nixon kind of leading the way there. So while Aaron Rodgers, I'm not expecting him to find the fountain of youth again like he did last week. We'll talk about that game a bit more later on, but I would say at least from a floor standpoint, I would give it to Rodgers just for Week 15 though.
All right, next one in is from Lisa B2877. Which is the better stack today? Josh Allen and Dalton Kincaid or Drake May and Hunter Henry? I'm glad that this one got brought up here because I have a pretty crazy stat to share for Dalton Kincaid, and that is the way I'm going to go here, by the way. I'm going to pick Josh Allen and Dalton Kincaid. These are the top 5 yards per route runs for tight ends in an individual season where the tight end ran 150 plus routes. Number 1, Rob Gronkowski. Number 2, George Kittle. Number 3, Mark Andrews. Number 4 is Dalton Kincaid at 2.89 yards per route this season. Then it's like 3 straight George Kittle seasons because that guy's just an absolute animal. So Dalton Kincaid is playing extremely good football right now. I know it's kind of always frustrating in fantasy because he doesn't play a full-time role. He's only on the field for about 53% of the routes in any given week, but he needs to be efficient in that role to be great in fantasy. Guess what? He's been historically efficient so far. So I'm definitely going to go ahead and pick the Dalton Kincaid, Josh Allen sign of this one here. Let's get to another one here for you, Chris, at Goody1306. Love the numbers. Just love reading off numbers this early in the morning. Morning, fellas. I need to start 1.5 PPR between Chuba Hubbard at New Orleans or Jordan Mason at Dallas or Ricky Pearsall versus Tennessee. Thank you and good luck in your playoffs today. Yes, contractually, I am not obliged to answer any Ricky Pearsall questions this morning. So, Chris, this one definitely has to go to you. Between Hubbard, Jordan Mason, or Ricky Pearsall, which one are you flexing in a half PPR format?
See, and I'm going to go against Ricky Pearsall on this one just because the snaps and also the route share and also the target share just hasn't been there for him in the 3 weeks since he's been back from injury. Could I paint the case that the bye week is perfectly timed so that he gets an extra week to rest and he comes back against his pass funnel defense against the Titans? Absolutely. But that's more projecting. We just haven't seen it yet come together for Ricky Pearsall. So out of that group, I would rather Chuba Hubbard going up against the Saints. We saw going into the bye how well he played, and even though Rico Dowdle wound up with the higher share of the carries, again, anybody that watched that game could see that Hubbard was the more effective running back between those two. So if I had to choose any out of that group that was provided in the question, I would say it's Chuba Hubbard for me.
I think that's the right answer, even though in one of my leagues where I don't have Drake London or Marvin Harrison Jr., I have to play Ricky Pearsall. So I hope you're wrong, and yet I also think that is the correct answer here. Final one we'll get to in this segment. This one comes from S. Penny Sherm 3162. Full PPR plus tight end premium here, Mike Gesicki or Jayden Reed. Look, you guys know I love Jayden Reed. I think he's a great player, one of the most dynamic receivers in that Green Bay Packers wide receiver room. But I got to go Mike Gesicki here, man. When one of Jamar Chase, or especially if T. Higgins is out, Mike Gesicki just becomes the Bengals' big slot receiver. He's not really a tight end. He's labeled as a tight end. I'm not going to chart any Mike Gesicki routes. Let's not get that started here. But he just plays big slot receiver for this Bengals team. He's hardly ever blocking in line. He becomes a high-end targeted player when one of those guys sits. So, yeah, with the tight end premium bonus here, I'm definitely going Mike Gesicki in this particular one. It is time for our first break here on Fantasy Football Live. But when we come back, we're headed for a fantasy feast in Southern California. We're going to preview Lions and Rams next, right after this quick break. Fantasy Football Live continues here on Yahoo Sports, Yahoo Fantasy YouTube, and the Yahoo Sports Network. Plenty of fantasy points going to be available in a big matchup at SoFi this afternoon. We've got the Lions traveling to LA to take on the Rams. Rams are a 6-point home favorite. We've got a fat 55-point total here, so we know we're going to see some fantasy points. And I just love this matchup because there's just something about Matthew Stafford facing his old team, Jared Goff facing his old team. Anytime we can get this matchup, I really enjoy it. And the quarterback angle is what I'm looking at here for this team in this matchup. Matthew Stafford, man, he has just been shredding man coverage this season. He's been shredding in general, but specifically against man coverage, he's been one of the best quarterbacks in the league. He has an NFL high 21 touchdowns, and he's thrown exactly 0 interceptions when working against man coverage this season. His 10.8 adjusted yards per attempt is only lower than one other quarterback in the NFL. Ironically, it's the man who it will be on the other side of the field today in Jared Goff. And this is important here because this Lions defense is very banged up in the secondary, but it almost doesn't matter who they're rolling out there. They still just play a ton of man coverage. And I expect to see yet another big outing from Stafford here today because he gets it done in so many different ways when working against man coverage. Play action on 37% of his dropbacks against man coverage this year. That's most among all quarterbacks. The play fakes make it even harder to defend an already difficult offense to figure out here. Down at the goal line with Davante Adams, he's been exactly what they've wanted this year. That ISO man coverage receiver in the scoring area. He's pacing for like almost 20 touchdowns this year. Just absolutely absurd stuff from Davante Adams. Even if he's banged up in this matchup, I still think he can get into the end zone against man coverage. And Puka Nacua, year 3, he's already a great player. We know that, but he's made another leap this season specifically as that isolated receiver against press man coverage. So Matthew Stafford, it all trickles down to him. He's a clear-cut fantasy starter for me this week, just as he has been all season. Chris, what are you looking at in this very, very highly anticipated matchup?
So I'll stick on the same side of the ball because when we talk about the Rams, and as you pointed out, the focus is on the passing game, and rightly so with the way that Matthew Stafford has been playing. The leading MVP candidate, Davante Adams has the most touchdowns of any receiver. But I would say the Rams' ground game is also fantasy relevant, and they've got not just one running back that's worth starting, but 2. I mean, Kyren Williams has been and continues to be the starter. I mean, of the 19 running backs with a carry share north of 50%, Williams is first in rushing success rate. And so with as often as the Rams get into the red zone, Kyren has been able to benefit from Stafford too. He has the 9th most red zone rushing attempts. So being able to carry the mail for one of the leading MVP candidates right now, it's a pretty good gig if you ask me. But we're not seeing more of Blake Corum just because OC Mike LaFleur wants to keep Williams fresh for their playoff run. Corum has also shown why Sean McVay wanted to draft him last year, because on the season, Corum leads the backfield in adjusted yards after contact per attempt and also forced missed tackle rate. And as we saw against the Panthers and the Cardinals, I mean, Corum can pop for an explosive gain almost at any point. I mean, per PFF, Corum is top 20 in both 10-plus yards and breakaway runs on the season. And so now with Detroit sitting at about the league average in yards per game allowed, I mean, they've given up over 100 yards on the ground in 3 of their last 6 games. I think it makes either of those running back viable starts in what should be let's say, a revenge game for both Matthew Stafford and, of course, Jared Goff on the flip side of this too.
Rookies typically dominate the conversation in fantasy football in the stretch run here. We know this is often the story of how you win your fantasy title. Did you have the right rookies in your lineup? Let's give out some grades here, Chris. The rookie report card. Let's open up the grading book here, hand out some grades to some first-year players in terms of their playoff outlook. That's what we're looking at here. Not what they've done so far, what we think they will be going forward. I'll get us started here with Panthers wide receiver Tetairoa McMillan. I'm going to give McMillan a B here going forward because, number one, he's just an awesome player. Okay, like that much we know. Him in isolation, he might be more of an A-graded player for what he's been this season. I think what he will be going forward. I do think we have to give him a B here for multiple reasons. Like I said, number one, he's a player that we can trust the target share. We can trust that he's going to be the number one read in the progression. I also like the fact that they have a guy like Jalen Coker emerging before the bye that allows Tetairoa McMillan to move around a little bit. That has definitely been a big part of the story in his second half of his rookie season, that he's been moving around the formation, getting more of those layup looks. That's going to be key for him. I think the only thing that holds me back from saying he's going to be an A the rest of the way is, number one, the Bryce Young factor. That's a part of it. Like, Young is a very up and down player. This is a very up and down Panthers team. I mean, it's a team that has beaten the LA Rams and has also been obliterated and lost to this very Saints team that they're going to be playing this week. So they're a very up and down team, hard to project. And then you look at the matchup in week 17 against the Seattle secondary. That's one where we might be questioning, is McMillan more of a high-end wide receiver 2, or more of a boom bust wide receiver 3. So overall, still a player you're probably starting every single week, but we will have to adjust based on that matchup in the championship week. Chris, give me a rookie and their grade for their playoff outlook here.
So I'm going to go to the Commanders and Giants game, and I'm going to stick with the Giants here. We'll look at Jackson Dart real quick, and I'm going to give him a B- so far. And I feel like we talked about him earlier in the season, but now that we've seen more time to watch Dart, I'm still coming away impressed with him as a passer alone, at least relative to his situation, right? No Malik Neighbors, no Cam Scatterbo. Also good to see Scatterbo actually walking around earlier. Saw him posting stuff on IG saying that he's up and around. And also multiple injuries along the offensive line for the Giants. So across his 8 starts, he's sitting around the league average in about every efficiency metric: 20th in adjusted completion percentage, 17th in EPA per dropback, 21st in completion percentage over expected, plus he's 17th in yards generated on deep passes. So about where you would want to see a guy of his ilk and kind of where his situation is at right now. But Dart's situation exemplifies why most of those advanced metrics are team stats and not necessarily isolated quarterback stats when you're throwing to Wan'Dale Robinson, Darius Slayton, Isaiah Hodgins, and the ghost of Jalen Hyatt. So on that alone, and seeing how he's handling pressure, he's 11th in EPA per dropback under duress behind a makeshift offensive line and not a strong receiving group. I mean, I'd give him a B+, but if we're looking at his stuff going forward, I mean, his biggest strength has been his mobility, and that's been something of a curse for him. Because, yeah, it was cool seeing him scramble against the Patriots in primetime, but Christian Ellis had no problem reminding Dart why he had to miss a week. And so it wasn't surprising to see the interim Giants coaching staff remove any of those design runs and seeing Dart more of as a scrambler. So I'd be shocked if they start to add those elements back in over the next couple of weeks. I mean, but still, I mean, decent matchups. I mean, tough game against, I believe they have a matchup against the Vikings here in week 16, but they do get the Raiders in week 17. So, I mean, if he continued to take those hits, that's why I kind of move him back to a B-. I mean, a solid passer, again, given the situation, and hope that improves in 2026. But for right now, looking at the potential matchups moving forward, I have him down at a B- for right now.
I think that is fair, and I'm actually going to give the same exact grade, B- here, to Broncos running back RJ Harvey. There's a lot to talk about here with Harvey. Number one, his pass catching role and his now kind of securing of the goal line work in Denver is enough to make him a fantasy football running back too, almost no matter what. However, 3 really difficult matchups here coming up: Packers, Jags, and then at Chiefs in the fantasy football championship week. That is definitely a little bit of a volatile situation for Harvey. However, I think we saw Harvey make a big step as an individual player last week. I thought he turned in his best game as a pro, as a runner. And look, I understand it was against the Raiders, which is on the other end of the spectrum there. If like Chiefs, Jags, Packers as a run defense is over here, the Raiders a little bit farther south in terms of the difficulty of matchup. However, in weeks 11 and 13 with Harvey starting, the Broncos ranked 12th in yards before contact and dead last in yards after contact. They were the only team under 2.0 yards per contact, yards after contact per running back rush attempt in those 2 weeks. And I think that kind of shows you that Harvey is a guy who was leaving yards on the field. He wasn't always hitting the right hole. He wasn't always decisive. Then this past week with Harvey, again, as the starter against the Raiders in week 14, Denver ranked 5th in yards before and 14th in yards after contact, which was pretty much what they were doing when J.K. Dobbins was the starter on the field. So I think we're seeing Harvey make some steps as a player, hit holes with more authority, being more decisive. Again, I know the matchups are challenging down the stretch, but with him looking like he's developing a little bit as a player. Remember, this was a guy who is not a collegiate running back throughout the course of his career. He started as a quarterback in college. So a little bit of development here is expected, and yet he's got that pass catching role. He's starting to play better as a runner. He's the guy down by the goal line. I think that RJ Harvey's a guy that, again, B-, you can certainly start as a running back too. Just maybe keep those expectations in check. Last rookie, who is it, Chris Allen, that we're talking about here, given the grade 2 in the rookie report card?
Admittedly, this has a bit more recency bias baked into it, but I'm liking what I'm seeing out of Chindike, wide receiver for the Tennessee Titans. And I'll give him a B- because granted, it's only been 3 games without Calvin Ridley in the lineup, but I would say the first positive sign was seeing DK move up into a more full-time role. His routes went up to around 87% after sitting at 55% of the routes in the 3 months prior. But on top of the extra cardio, he's also been showing a pretty healthy route tree. I mean, going through some of his film, you can see everything from screens and slants to crossing patterns, deep go routes, posts. I mean, he's really showing a lot of that development from a wide receiver standpoint, that he's not just that check down type of option for Cam Ward. I mean, averaging 8.8 yards or air yards per target, which for a guy running over 60% of his snaps from the slot is kind of what you'd like to see, not just the reliance on those check downs, but in a potential for those expanded concepts so that the offense can continue to deploy them on a week in, week out basis. Again, small sample, but I would like to put him in that class of interior options, like one of your favorites, Harmon, like Tyler Lockett, or even Jayden Reed right now, who are different stylistically, but you could say that the team relies on them to create explosives or even just get a bucket, like our buddy Nate Tice likes to say. So the only issue for me moving forward, and that's why I give him the B-, is the Cam Ward of it all. Like, what path will his development take over these next few weeks? I mean, a couple of tough matchups, got one against the Chiefs. The Saints can probably give him a couple of problems as well with as many sacks as he's taken. So who's to say that this is going to be a couple of down games for Cam Ward, which of course then brings DK down a bit. So good to see him from a special team standpoint continue to play well as a return man. But from a receiving standpoint, I'm liking what I'm seeing at DK and hope to see a bit more over these last few weeks of the season.
Titans fans will take any level of optimism they can get right now, Chris. So I think a B- from you is very generous to what's been happening with that Tennessee Titans offense. So love to see that there. Let's get an update on the latest rankings. Let's bring Boone back in here for some breaking ranks. Boone, give me a player you've adjusted here in the last few moments as we've gotten some breaking news down here in the game before the games kick off.
Well, this is one of those weeks where you got to drag me from the rankings cave kicking and screaming, because there's a lot of updates that need to be done this morning. So I had to jump back on here, but there's going to have to be some updates done in between the breaks moving forward. So 3 players, as always. We're going all positive this week, but that's because we got a bunch of injury situations to talk about. So the first one, Josh Jacobs up to RB11. This was a situation where a couple days ago, we weren't even sure if he was going to play, right? DNP, and then limited with the knee injury, but all signs right now are that he's expected to be out there. I'm docking him obviously because the injury. I'm also docking him because the matchup. It is a tough one against the Broncos defense, but he often comes through in bad matchups, and it normally is like a kind of a boring stat line. Let's face it, like Josh Jacobs tends to give you like 60, 70 yards and a touchdown. I think that's the kind of game we should expect this week. It's not going to be a ceiling game for him, but I think he's going to go out there and be able to perform. He's done it before when he's had injuries. He's battled through. And also his backup, Emmanuel Wilson, we're not sure if he's going to play today because he got added to the injury report with an illness yesterday. So we'll see what happens there. It's unfortunate that this one is a late afternoon kickoff, so we don't know for sure at the moment who's going to be out there for this team, but it seems like Jacobs is going to play, and I think if he's out there, you have him in your lineup. He's that kind of player. Second one here, Woody Marks up to RB15, and I'll be honest, I might tick him up a couple more spots, and this comes down to the fact that he is going to get all the work in that backfield, Harmon. I know it feels kind of weird, right? It feels strange in the first week of the fantasy playoffs. We're going to have Woody Marks this high, really, but Nick Chubb is going to miss this game, and that means Marks is the guy. Like, are you trusting Dare Ogunbowale? Are you trusting British Brooks, the fullback in that backfield? Like, they don't have anybody else. This is why they drafted him. This is why they've been using him and slowly giving him more as the year's gone along. So I think you could expect a big game from him here because the Cardinals defense, they're giving up the 4th most fantasy points on the season, but lately, Harmon, crushed. 131 scrimmage yards and 2 TDs to Blake Corum. Kyron Williams in that same game, 97 and a TD. The week before, it was 81 and a touchdown to Bucky Irving. The week before, 116 and a touchdown to Travis Etienne. The week before that, 121 and 3 touchdowns to CMC. I think you get the idea. I could stop there, but we could keep going. They have given up a lot of production to running backs. Woody Marks is going to be the next one, in part because he has to. He has to get the volume here. There's no one else that's going to. And then the last guy that we're going to talk about, this is the big news this morning, Bill Krosky-Merritt. I've moved him up to RB30. Another guy that I'm going to have to keep looking at here. I want to push him up even further. And this just comes down to Chris Rodriguez Jr., who we talked about on the waiver wire show. I am sorry, everybody. He showed up on the injury report with a groin injury on Wednesday, ended up getting into limited practice, but they have now ruled him out. And that means it's the redemption story, Harmon. JCM is going to get a shot against the Giants defense that gives up the second most fantasy points to running backs. What an up and down ride. What a roller coaster for this guy.
For real.
But is it not possible that he's going to come out today and actually help some people move on in the fantasy playoffs? I know I moved him into a couple lineups. I have him in the Scott Fishbowl, and I needed somebody in that spot. I have Marvin Harrison Jr. out. Well, guess what? JCM to the rescue, and I think he can step up into people's lineups as potentially like a low-end RB2, but better yet, an RB3 flex option this week.
Oh my God. Nothing would be more perfect than after the preseason of Bill. He kind of comes out. He has really like one good game, if we're being honest here. And then he just completely disappears, comes back to win people fantasy championships. He's the guy you needed all along. What a twist that would be. A story for the
what
ages
could go wrong?
Corey Krosky Merritt. Yeah, what could possibly go wrong? Well, Boone's going to continue to tweak those rankings, and we are going to continue to take your questions here on the show. So let's jump into the hurry up offense here. We'll put some time on the clock. We got to answer these things quickly here. Let's start with this first one. Mont E. Half PPR, Christian Watson, Devontae Smith, and dare I say Justin Jefferson. Oh yeah, you dare say it. Got to play two. Thanks and Merry Christmas. Hashtag AskFFL. Chris Allen, this is a hard question, so I'm not answering it, and you've only got 11 seconds left. You got to pick two of them here, Chris. Who are we going with?
I'll take the first two. I can't trust Justin Jefferson at this point. Down in targets, Jordan Addison actually led the way last week in production. I'll go with the first two guys, first two wide receivers.
Very fair. All right, next one comes in from Brian Jerkins. Cowboys or Saints defense, Hall, Marks, Tracy, Tet, Flowers, or Corum for flex PPR? Boone, this is a double question, so I'm definitely not taking it. It's got defenses in it. This one's coming to you. Pick the defense, pick the flex here.
Even though the Saints are a sneaky defense that you could play in a tough spot, they've been producing, and the matchup's not bad at all, but I'm going with the Cowboys here against our boy JJ McCarthy, who could have a good game, but let's face it, he's going to turn the ball over. And then, of course, it's Marks, who I mentioned just a moment ago.
Yeah, I just want to get on the record here. Like, in no way is JJ McCarthy our boy. Like, you can have 9 for yourself, Boone.
One of the players we've talked about here, a ton this season, far too much.
Begrudgingly, yes. Last one we'll take here. This one comes in from Jorge. I've got one running back and a flex spot open. Who are you recommending starting between Michael Wilson, Devin Neal, and Travion Henderson? Really good one here. I'll take this. I think Travion Henderson goes into the running back spot here for me. I know that Ramondre Stevenson was still eating touches in the game before the bye, but it's such a good matchup against that Bills run defense. I'll go ahead and put him into the lineup. And then Michael Wilson will be the flex for me over Devin Neal. Neal's definitely going to get a ton of volume, but I think Wilson going to get a lot of volume himself as well. All right, it's time for another break here on Fantasy Football Live. Michael Wilson, we were just talking about him. He's been a fantasy goldmine with Marvin Harrison Jr. out, but is he a lock to do it again in Week 15? That is still ahead. We'll be right back after this quick break. Welcome back to Fantasy Football Live here on Yahoo Sports. Matt Harmon, Chris Allen, and Justin Boone hanging out with you all the way up until kickoff. Plus, if you want to get some answers from an actual serious person who is all business, no goofing around, all business, Scott Pianowski is out there on Twitter answering all of your roster quandaries. Just make sure to use the hashtag AskFFL, and Scott will get you right. Speaking of get right, let's get these lineups right for the people out there. Time for some lock it in. These are matchup proof players who are in some tough spots, but we are absolutely trusting them here in week 15. Boone, who's someone you're locking in this week?
Chris Olave. We've talked about him a lot this year as a guy who just gets a ton of volume. He's going up against the Panthers, and they're allowing the 8th fewest fantasy points to wideouts this year. So on paper, it's one of those matchups that pops up red, makes you second guess whether you should put him in your lineup. But he has been fantastic here, right? In terms of the volume that he gets, and the last time that he played this team, what did he do? 5 receptions, 104 yards, and a touchdown. And you look at some of the stat lines that the Panthers have given up. Oh no, Boone's about to rattle off a bunch of stats again here. Here we go. Week 8, Khalil Shakir, 88 yards and a touchdown. Week 9, Romeo Doubs, 91 yards. That Olave game happened in week 10. Drake London in week 11, 119. Week 12, Juwan Jennings had a touchdown and 41 yards. And then week 13, Devontae Adams, 58 and 2 TDs. So even though they're pretty good, they're in the top 10 in terms of fewest points allowed to wide receivers, this is still a spot that he's already proven just a month ago he can get through here. I think he is going to have a good game. I think you could start him pretty confidently as a wide receiver too.
Love that. I'll stick on underappreciated wide receiver corner here, and I'll talk about the man we've mentioned several times already, Michael Wilson, Arizona Cardinals. He is a player I am actually locking into my lineups here, so I'm not just saying it, I'm doing it in this particular segment. I'm locking Michael Wilson in as at least a high-end wide receiver too. We know that Michael Wilson, with Jacoby Brissett starting and with Marvin Harrison Jr. in the lineup since week 6, 13.8 targets per route, not that great. When it's Michael Wilson without Marvin Harrison Jr. and Jacoby Brissett starting, that jumps up to 35% targets per route. I mean, that is outrageous work. I think that continues to hold in this matchup. And Jacoby Brissett, he's going to drop back 50 freaking times like he does almost every single week here. They're just dropping back and dropping back and dropping back with Jacoby Brissett under center because the Cardinals stink and because they actually trust him to run the offense, which has been a clear-cut thing that we have seen with Brissett under center here. So yes, in those 3 games that we've seen with Michael Wilson and no Marvin Harrison Jr., Niners, Jags, Rams, the Texans defense is a totally different beast. No question about that. That being said, we've also seen that Jacoby Brissett, when Michael Wilson is in tough coverage, they have really good timing and chemistry on those back shoulder passes, tight window targets. Wilson has won those as well, so I continue to trust him here as a wide receiver too. Is he going to be a top 5 scorer like he's been in some other weeks? Maybe not, but I think he can still get double-digit targets and be a usable fantasy second receiver here. Chris, who's someone you are locking into lineups here in week 15?
So I'll stick with the Commanders-Giants game. I think we were talking a bit about when we were talking about Jackson Dart. And I'll go Terry McLaurin on the flip side of that game. I mean, he's had back-to-back games with over 25% of the team's targets, something he hasn't been able to do all season because of the quad injury. And you could tell McLaurin was back to full strength for the Commanders in prime time against the Broncos. I mean, his 96 yards were the second most any wide receivers generated against Denver's secondary. Plus, McLaurin and Treylon Burks were the first wide receivers to catch a touchdown pass against the Broncos since Jalen Tolbert back in week 8. I mean, Zach Ertz done for the season. Deebo Samuel popped up with the illness on the injury report on Friday. So, and against the Giants defense that will be without at least 4 players on their defensive rotation, McLaurin should be a no-brainer in fantasy for this week.
Love it. Love all 3 of those wide receivers. I hope they all do well this week. I just want to see them all find some success here. Speaking of player we really like, let's get to fantasy face-off here. We're going to talk about one of the top pickups for similarly ranked players. And Boone, we finally did it. We finally got people to pick up Harold Fannin after talking about him on the Waiver Wire podcast every single week. He's finally a guy that is on, I think, at least like 60-something% of rosters right now, which is still not enough. Really like him this given week. Let's put him up against some similarly ranked players here. Let's do Harold Fannin versus Brenton Strange. Boone, since I was already talking to you, let's do it here. We playing Harold Fannin, we playing Brenton Strange in this game.
I don't want to spoil my takes in this section, but there are not a lot of tight ends that I would play over Harold Fannin this week. And you look at what he's done on the season, tight end 11 in fantasy points per game among tight ends. But in the most recent 3 weeks, when we've had David Njoku battling through injury, when we had Shadur Sanders out there peppering him with targets, he's been the tight end 4 over the last 3 games. Now we have David Njoku out this week. I have him as a top 5 fantasy tight end. I am taking him over Brenton Strange, who is going to have even more competition for targets there with Parker Washington playing this week.
All right, Chris, next debate is coming to you here. Are we playing Harold Fannin or are we playing Travis Kelce? Boone already says top 5. Is he in that kind of range for you this week?
Nah, I'm out on Travis Kelce. Not just because he burned me in primetime picks last week, but we've also seen, even that specific game on the broadcast, him struggling to create separation throughout the night. I mean, meanwhile, over the last 2 months, Fannin is averaging slightly more targets per game, and also Fannin has done more on fewer opportunities, 1.99 yards per route run, despite sharing some of those positional targets with David Njoku. I mean, the only thing that sticks in the back of my mind between those two tight ends that you're seeing up on the screen right now is that this is essentially the Chiefs' last stand. Hollywood Brown is out. Do Mahomes and Kelce go Super Saiyan mode, turn back the clock to 2022 and try to make things awkward for the AFC West? Given their history, it's possible, but also recent history makes me think Fannin is the better pick for not just this week, but also the near future as well.
Can't disagree with that at all. Final player here, Tyler Warren. Boone, I think I have a feeling you've already spoiled this movie for us here. Nevertheless, tell us the ending here. Are you going to Harold Fannin or are you going Tyler Warren catching passes from 44-year-old Phillip Rivers off the couch?
Well, that's the thing. It would be very, very close if we still had Daniel Jones out there, right? But that is just not the case. We have a weird scenario at quarterback where I am very worried for Phillip Rivers today going against that Seahawks defense. And it's strange because the Seahawks defense, Harmon, we've discussed this before, that they are so good. And yet against fantasy tight ends, they tend to give up some production. And still here with the QB situation with Phillip Rivers out there with a low total this week. Like, this is just not the same offense that we saw earlier in the season when Tyler Warren was having better games. So I'm sitting him down in favor of Fannin this week.
All right, we got a bonus one coming in here for you, Chris. This one comes in from @Headley Dubluer. I don't what a name here in the YouTube chat. Good morning, boys. PPR, Likely or Fannin? I mentioned Isaiah Likely is an interesting pickup earlier. Would you play Likely or Harold Fannin in this matchup? Plus bonus one, Quinshon Judkins or Josh Jacobs. So you can take both of those here for our buddy Headley.
So let's see, from the tight ends, I would still lean Fannin in this game, even though Likely is probably has the higher upside. I'll put it like this. So let's say if you're trying to come back if you got pitzed on Thursday night and you're looking at staring down the barrel of a 45-point deficit, sure, I would swing for the fences with a guy like Isaiah Likely. But if everything is still 0-0, Fannin, his projectable targets, I do lean a bit more in his direction. But who are the two running backs again? It was like Quinshon Judkins and Josh Jacobs.
Quinshon Judkins and Josh Jacobs. Yep.
Yeah, I do like Judkins a bit more. Josh Jacobs popping up with the knee swelling earlier this week, and I know that he should still get the majority of the carries, especially with Emmanuel Wilson also banged up. But we've seen so far how much they're trying to lean on Quinshon Judkins. And also, the Bears, they have been something of a run funnel over these past few weeks. So I think from a volume standpoint, I do lean a bit more towards Judkins just this week, though.
All right, let's take some more of your lineup questions. It's time for Make Your Pick. This is where we're going to help you find that optimal flex play. First one comes in from Profits with a little $sign there at the end. How beautiful. Hashtag Make Your Pick. Scary Terry, Kyron Williams, Quinshon Judkins, or Kenneth Walker. Full PPR. I need two. Boone, make the decision here. Who is Profits playing in this matchup?
I am going with Kyron for sure. And then if we're talking PPR, it's pretty tough. I honestly think I'm going to go with Judkins, though, because Dylan Sampson's out. Jerome Ford's on IR. I think we're going to see him continue to get a little more work in the passing game. I would actually take him over Scary Terry this week.
I love it. Yeah, Kyron definitely the guy I would lock in there as well. Chris, this next one's coming from you. This one's from Jonathan, DJ Moore, Jerry Jeudy, Adonai Mitchell, Kayshon Boutte. Oh my God, they've got to pick two. They've got to pick two of these players here. I'm so glad to hand the ball off on this one. This is like the read option, and I see the defensive end is crashing in on me. I'm like, oh yeah, buddy, you're taking that ball on this one. So Chris, you pick two options here between these four guys.
Goodness gracious, this is tough. I'll work it in reverse. How about this? I don't want Adonai Mitchell, not just because of last week and the Brady Cook of it all, but also going up against the Jags defense, which has played really well over these last 6 to 8 weeks. So I think he's out for me. I'd say Kayshon Boutte. I mean, for how often Drake Maye likes to go deep, he is one that does stick out, even though he's a bit more of a volatile play. But if there's any way I can see some upside out of this entire group, I'd say Boutte with some of the deep shots. I'd say his usage sticks out in this one. So I'll take him as one of them. And then if I had to go between either of DJ Moore or Jerry Jeudy, this is going to sound terrible, but I'm still I'll go with Jerry Jeudy here, just because Rome Odunze being back. Whew. I have Colston Loveland also working around there. Luther Burden still kicking around. The number of targets, I would say, could go away from DJ Moore and having his usage limited in this offense. Whereas Jerry Jeudy, it really is just him and Harold Fannin. Not the best choices, but I'd say for just looking for projectable targets, Jeudy grades out as the better between him and DJ Moore.
I think that was the right answer, and it's pretty crazy that I agree with you. When I saw those four names, the one I felt the best about was Kayshon Boutte, which, what a time to be alive, baby. All right, we're going to take another quick break. On the other side of it, we're going to pick out under-the-radar playoff heroes you might be overlooking. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back after this. Welcome back to Fantasy Football Live. We're talking about another big game here on the slate. Vikings at Cowboys. The Cowboys are 5.5-point home favorites. The over-under is 48. Both these teams are technically still alive for the playoffs, but very unlikely that either makes it. So for the most part, we're playing for having a good time and scoring some fantasy points in this one. So let's talk about who's going to score some fantasy points. I'll get us started here and say, can J.J. McCarthy just be functional again? You know, the bar is so low for this guy. And I don't say that to be mean, but he has been one of the least efficient quarterbacks in the NFL in his first few starts. And yet last week, we absolutely saw him turn a corner. 0.6 EPA per dropback, easily the best of his young career as a starting quarterback. In fact, it was the only time he wasn't in a negative EPA per dropback graded game was that week against the Commanders. We saw him last time out. the question here is just, can we see that again? And I think we saw some things where McCarthy can start to be built up as a starting quarterback here. We saw him get the tight ends involved, dump off to the flat, like just one read, get it out, trust the run game, stay in positive down and distance situations. That is certainly what I'm looking for here, is can the run game stay active to keep him in those positive down and distance situations so that he's not just dropping back and having to push the football down the field. Certainly something I'm looking at, and yet it's a tougher matchup for the Vikings run game against this Cowboys defense that's turned it around there, but there's going to be some spots for him to pick at down the field. McCarthy's just got to hit the throws here. So this is more of me asking a question. I don't really know the answer here. And Boone, I'm going to throw this next one to you. What are you looking at in this game as it pertains to the Vikings offense?
Well, you said J.J. McCarthy isn't our guy, and then you just have to go talk about him later in the show. He might still be our guy, man. We talked about him a ton. We've also talked about his guy. We've also talked about his top receiver, Justin Jefferson. And my question is just, what do fantasy managers do with Justin Jefferson? We already saw, I believe, one question come through where someone was trying to figure out whether they should play him this week or not. It's been bad. It has been really bad. And even recently, like some of the work that he's gotten, it's just been like screen passes and stuff. Like, this is not the Justin Jefferson of old, but we finally saw McCarthy do something last week. And this matchup is just so good with the Cowboys. They've gotten better against the run since the trade deadline. They beefed up on the line, but you can still throw on them. He has to come through here, doesn't he? He's not going to be Justin Jefferson of old. He's not going to be top 5 results, but he's going to be a top 20 receiver, isn't he? I think you have to start him that way. That's how I have him ranked. But again, this is another one where you can't feel confident based on his recent production and really his production all season long with McCarthy. You cannot feel good about having him in your lineup. And yet, do you want to be that person that waited all year, finally sat finally sat Justin Jefferson, and then have him go off in the fantasy playoffs and you don't make it through? He's one of those names that is going to stay in my lineups, even if I'm going down with the ship with him in there.
Brave man, Justin Boone, brave man. Pretty telling in that whole little soliloquy I gave about J.J. McCarthy. I never said Justin Jefferson's name once. That's a little bit troubling. Chris, take us to the other side of the ball. What are you looking at for the Dallas Cowboys offense?
So I'll be looking at George Pickens on the flip side of this game. And I feel like Steelers fans, that they've been waiting for, let's just call them moments from George Pickens, because despite getting 9 targets for the 6th straight game, Pickens generated less than 50 yards for just the second time all season. But it wasn't without some hiccups here and there. There were questions about his effort that were being asked during the game. Dak looked frustrated a couple of times on some routes and miscommunications. And then, of course, Pickens gets into a social media battle with Richard Sherman afterwards. Essentially, the I told yins so's that they've been running rampant for the last week and a half from Steelers fans, knowing this was going to happen at some point. That's not to say that the concerns weren't valid. I mean, but we've seen enough specific usage from Pickens that we should be able to see a bounce back from him, because DC Brian Flores, he's had that Vikings defense firing yet again. His squad ranks in the top 10 in overall pressure rate, blitz rate, 51.4% blitz rate over their last 6 games. And they also have one of the fastest times to pressure. But what's the way to beat quick pressure? It's also quick throws. And actually, since Lamb returned from his injury, Pickens has out-targeted CeeDee Lamb on some of those quick throws or quick hitters. He's had and also been really effective on those as well. Per True Media, 17 of his 39 targets when Dak has gotten rid of the ball quickly, they've been on those slant routes. I mean, he has 2.82 yards per route run and 20 first downs on those concepts. So again, it's not the only solution for Pickens to get back into the good graces of not just fantasy managers, but Shoddy and the rest of the team. But I mean, it's also a reason to keep the Cowboys at least into this game, and then also a reason to potentially keep them throughout this offseason, potentially give them a franchise tag or something along those lines too.
Yeah, let's hope. I need a George Pickens bounce back, like I need air this week. Let's just say that. All right, we've waited long enough. It's that time to turn our attention here to primetime picks.
Are you looking for the most prestigious fantasy advice in the business?
Here, and I'm going to walk right up to the mic, and I'm going to select me some Kraft mac and cheese to finish this draft off for me. Feeling pretty good about that one.
Trying to find the best flex players for primetime games.
Now I'll have to put my money where my mouth is and say that Hollywood Brown, come on down.
Are you a veteran manager in a multi-year championship slump?
Rashee Rice will be the first pick here. Whatever.
Then look no further than Yahoo Sports' Canadian son, Justin Boone.
Oh, you guys are killing me. Those last two picks just leaves me with nothing here from that Bills-Patriots game. I'll go with Ramondre Stevenson. Let's hope he finds the end zone, I guess, on this one.
He confidently delivers championship picks each and every week.
Not really sure what to do. I don't want to take this guy, but Saquon Barkley, and just hope that he comes through.
Justin Boone. He's a master of the 4th and 5th pick turn.
And even though he's going up against the Bucs defense, they haven't been quite as good against fantasy running backs this year. So McCaffrey and Gibbs at the end of the first of the 1-2 turn here, I'm happy with that.
And with his 2025 win, now has more titles than the Buffalo Bills.
Maybe we should increase the degree of difficulty, and I can only pick guys who have the same last name. So let's go with Jaylen Warren and Tyler Warren here. I think they're both going to lead their teams.
Justin Boone, 2025 Primetime Picks champion.
Oh man, what a year it's been
That's
for
tough.
Justin Boone. What a just absolutely embarrassing effort for the three losers. Yes, we can, perhaps confirm the reporting, the rumors, the speculation that is why Fitz ducked the show here today, because he just couldn't stand the fact that, yes, Boone officially beat him out here, mathematically eliminated the three of us with many weeks left to go in the season in our primetime picks contest, and yet was humble about it through all. Very, very Canadian of you, Justin Boone. Any statement here to give before we show the standings?
I mean, you're humble until you actually win, right? And then once you win, you bring the belt out, you bring the fantasy championship ring there out.
Goodness
and
gracious.
you cracked the bubbly a little bit. So cheers, gentlemen. It was a fun competition. It's been enjoyable.
Hey, take it easy on the drink there, pal. You still got to win the rankings contest, okay? So don't get too hammered in the middle of this show here. We need you at your rightest and best here. So, yes, you're seeing the standings here now. Boone absolutely ran away with this thing. Don't look at the 4th place or the 3rd place. That's not important. The main thing here is that Boone won by 0.5 points in the final matchup over Fitz. As he said, I'm going to take Saquon Barkley and just hope and pray. Well, he hoped and prayed his way all the way to a big victory here. So the contest is over. We got to do something else in this segment. We are contractually obligated to fill the block here. We're going to talk about some playoff heroes. We're going to go, analyst by analyst here and pick some players who are lower than quarterback 10, lower than running back 20, and lower than wide receiver 20 on the season that can really help you in your fantasy matchups down the stretch. And because I'm the biggest loser of the group here, I get the honor of picking first here. I'm going to take RJ Harvey, Denver Broncos running back. Talked about him a little bit earlier. I think we saw some development out of his game, and I am truly cheating here. He is running back 21 on the season. So the highest ranked eligible person at the running back position, I'm going to take him here. I think we see some good weeks from him down the stretch. Chris, who are you taking off the board as a potential playoff hero at the running back position?
So I'll go Devin Neal. We haven't seen Alvin Kamara in weeks, and honestly, without Kamara in the lineup, Neal has taken over some of the historical uses for Kamara, because even in the early parts of the season, wasn't seeing those targets where we've seen that come to Neal. And he's got the Panthers, Jets, and Titans over the next 3 weeks. I like his outlook for the fantasy playoffs.
All right, Boone, give us the actual correct projection, considering you're the one who won this contest. Give us the actual answer here.
Yeah, I'm still not sure if this is another competition and I should be trying really hard, or if we're just randomly talking about guys that we like the rest of the way. But I'm going to bring up Woody Marks again, somebody that, hasn't been a top 20 running back all season by any means. And yet now in the fantasy playoffs, like I mentioned earlier, Nick Chubb is out. He gets a good matchup with a banged up Cardinals defense. I rattled off all the different backs that put up good stats against them recently. It's going to be a good one for him. And then next week he gets the Raiders, which is another positive spot. So I think he's going to finish the season really, really strong here in an offense that I think wants to get this run game going. Maybe they finally will here down the stretch with him.
Our long national nightmare is over here as we don't get back-to-back picks from Boone. I'll start us off at the wide receiver position here. I'll go with Jameson Williams. Again, I am cheating here. This is not a contest. We're not keeping track of this. We're just having fun here, Boone. Not everything has to be a competition.
All right.
Let your hair down a little bit, pal. Come on, relax. Jameson Williams is a guy that I think is going to go from one of those players who we've already started to see this happen. Absolutely crushed you in the first half of the season when things weren't going that well. Now I think things are going well for JMO, and it's kind of either pick your narrative. Is it because Dan Campbell took over the play calling, or is it just because Sam Laporta got hurt? Either way, he's getting targeted at an actual rate that is commensurate from where he was drafted in fantasy selections this August. Chris, who's a wide receiver you think can really help people down the stretch?
So I'll be looking at Juwan Jennings for the 49ers. Now, of course, the Cleveland Browns want to let it known that he's not a nice person once he gets out on the field. They definitely want that known. But still, from a target share standpoint and seeing things not really take off for Ricky Pearsall like the team had hoped for, I would say from a target rate standpoint, and especially in this week with Christian McCaffrey banged up, Juwan Jennings should be a solid wide receiver too for the remainder of the season.
Once again, Boone, Chris and I have cursed Jameson Williams and Juwan Jennings. Apologies to all the people who have them on rosters out there. Give the actual correct answer at wide receiver. Who is the league winner down the stretch?
Are you guys as excited about Jacoby Myers as I am? Like, now of the Jacksonville Jaguars, he has touchdowns in 3 straight games. He's looking like he's Trevor Lawrence's favorite target now. I know I mentioned earlier that Parker Washington's coming back. I'm not that worried about Parker Washington coming back. I think the connection's getting established here with Jacoby Myers as really like the shiny new toy. And like, who doesn't want to play with that new weapon that he's got? Like, obviously he wants to throw to him. And it's been happening. It's been delivering for fantasy. I think it's going to continue to happen. He is a top 20 wide receiver for me this week and the rest of the way.
All right, let's flip it to quarterback here. I'll get us started with Jackson Dart, New York Giants quarterback. And listen, I am concerned about the lack of designed rushing attempts for Jackson Dart. We saw in the game before the bye, they really dialed that back. Makes sense. They want to preserve him. They got to keep him healthy. The good news is he plays the Commanders this week, who play a ton of single high coverage. They give it the most points per drop back in single high coverage. And Jackson Dart, 102 passer rating versus single high versus 84 passer rating against two high. So I think you can start Dart confidently, even if he's not running around all over the field coming off the bye here. Chris, who are you taking here for a quarterback to help people out in their playoff matchups?
So we'll see how long Jayden Daniels is going to be out, whether it's for the remainder of the season or just this week. But I'll go with Marcus Mariota. Apparently, we'll go with him for this week. And now it's good to see OC Cliff Kingsbury still dialing up a ton of play action. Mariota's still been scrambling around as well. So I'd say this week for sure. I know tough outs against the Eagles and even the Cowboys in week 17, but between the high efficiency that the Commanders have been able to show, especially with Terry McLaurin back in the lineup, I'd say Mariota should be a solid quarterback streamer for the remainder of the season.
All right, Boone, bring us home. Who's a quarterback that can help people in their playoff matchups?
I feel like I've been talking about this guy for a couple weeks now because he went on bye. Prior to that, had a couple tough games, but it was against tougher opponents that were pretty good against fantasy quarterbacks. Now he's coming back from his bye. He has one of the easiest schedules. It is Brock Purdy. And perhaps this is cheating because I think if he had stayed healthy all year, I think he would be inside of the top 10 quarterbacks. We wouldn't count him for a segment like this, but that's not the case. The only good matchup that he's had this year, though, it was against the Jags earlier in the season. And what did he do? Over 300 yards, threw for a couple touchdowns. The Titans this week, they're the 6th best matchup for fantasy QBs. So I think Brock Purdy here is going to remind everybody just how good he is, not just in real life, but also in fantasy with 3 straight favorable games here for the rest of the fantasy season.
I love it. All right, let's get to some more of your questions from the YouTube chat here. It's time for the Hurry Up Offense. This first one comes in from John Bello. Juwan Jennings versus Tennessee Titans or Chris Olave versus Carolina Panthers half PPR. Boone, I'm coming right back to you because you said Chris Olave is a lock-it-in player for you. Do you like him more than Juwan Jennings in a really good matchup this week?
I do. I would go with Olave here, but I like them both. I think they're both really solid plays. I have them both ranked as wide receiver 2s this week, so I don't think you feel bad about having either of these guys in your lineup, but if you're forcing me to pick, we're going Olave.
All right, next one. Perfect timing, by the way. Next one comes in from your boy, Blue. PPR. Nichols, Bill, Amarian Hampton, Alec. I'm assuming Alec Pierce. Hunt. I'm assuming Kareem Hunt and Johnson. I mean, come on, man. Flag on the play here. We need some first names. Like who is Johnson? I'm assuming Nicholas, Bill. All right, Chris, you get to do this one because I just yammered on and on here. We got to pick one of these options here.
So if I had to pick one out of that group, I would say it should be JCM just because the added volume with Chris Rodriguez out against the Giants.
Bold. I like that call. All right, this one for Mr. Paulie A. Morning, gents. Half PPR. Got to start one. Jake Ferguson, Mike Gesicki, AJ Barner, and then another half PPR. Start one. Jayden Reed, Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt, or Colby Parkinson. I'll take this one first. It's tight between Ferguson and Mike Gesicki, but I honestly feel better about Mike Gesicki in a potential good spot there as, again, just a wide receiver, big slot essentially for the Bengals. And then the last one, I like Jayden Reed against the Broncos, team that gives up a lot of production to the slot in that matchup. All right, last one here. Teflon Don sends in Patrick Mahomes or Drake Maye. Boone, who do you have ranked higher this week, Mahomes or the new Tom Brady, Drake Maye up there in New England?
Even though Drake Maye going against my Bills this week, you still got to go with him. He's shown such a high floor. And Mahomes did have an okay game earlier in the season against the Chargers, but he took a lot of rushing stats to get there. It was 57 rushing yards and a TD on the ground. You look at his matchups against the Chargers last year, was not great for fantasy. So a little bit scared. I have him down as a low-end QB1. Drake Maye is the play there.
All right, it's time for another break here on Fantasy Football Live. Up next, will Aaron Rodgers drink from the fountain of youth once again on Monday night? Somehow we've got an island game between the Steelers and the Dolphins. We're going to try to find some fantasy goodness in that game right after this quick break. Welcome back to Fantasy Football Live. Matt Harmon, Chris Allen, and Justin Boone with you here on Yahoo Sports, taking you all the way up to kickoff, which is rapidly approaching, and I'm starting to stress about my matchups here. So when these other guys are talking, I'm going to be doing some tinkering over here. That is for sure. But first, we have to talk about Monday Night Football, Dolphins at Steelers. Yes, somehow this is an island game in Week 15. We've got the Steelers as 3-point home favorites, a 41.5-point total. Boone, is there anything interesting to you from a fantasy football perspective in this matchup, and what is it here on Monday night?
Well, I could tell you, as a Bills fan, normally when the Dolphins travel up north in December, it doesn't bode well for them. And I'm curious, are they going to struggle in this game on a cold Pittsburgh night? Of course, we already know TJ Watt is going to be out for this one, but Tua Tagovailoa on the year, the QB 37 in fantasy points per game. He has not been good for fantasy. Now we're sending him to Pittsburgh in frigid conditions in prime time. Looks like it's going to be under 20 degrees in this game. Joe Shad of the Palm Beach Post, he had the stat to 0-5 when the temperature is below 40 degrees. And like I said, I can speak from experience as a Bills fan because 2 of those 5 losses were against Buffalo in Buffalo. Pittsburgh, it might not be a snowy game, but it is going to be very, very cold on Monday night. I think this passing attack is going to struggle because of it. So Jalen Waddle gets bumped down into the wide receiver 2 range. Darren Waller becomes a very risky streamer here. The only guy who you could trust to come through is probably going to be Devon Achane as long as he's healthy, which it looks like he's going to be out there and playing. And he's pretty much matchup proof, right? If they fall behind, he's going to catch passes. He can put up stats against anybody. So you're starting him with confidence. But other than that, I would be very worried about the Dolphins offense and anybody else that you're considering putting in your lineup this week for them.
I just wanted to clarify Boone's stat about Tua being QB 37 in points per game. There are 32 teams in the NFL, so you really don't want to be below the number 32 in points per game at the quarterback position. Chris, talk to me about the quarterback on the other side of the field here on Monday night.
So, Harmon, you don't know anything about this yet, but once you get into your 40s, some days you just wake up feeling right. Now, this morning for me was just the opposite. I slept on my neck wrong, so I got to do this full Batman turn thing in order to turn to the right. Oof. But it seems like for Rodgers last week, he woke up on the right side of the bed, drank from the fountain of youth, it looked like, because week 14 was just the 6th time all season Aaron Rodgers was averaging more than 6 air yards per attempt. I mean, he was still getting the ball out in less than 2.5 seconds. I mean, shoot, we even got the discount double check Selly when he got into the end zone. So even you can look at DK Metcalf's box score. That was the first time he had seen double-digit targets since week 6 when he was still in Seattle. But was last week just a product of Rodgers getting up and feeling right? I mean, 284 passing yards, that was a season high for Rodgers. And yeah, I mean, sure, the Ravens defense has been something of an issue, and Miami's defense hasn't been much better. I mean, Miami, they just got shucked by the Saints for 239 passing yards and a couple TDs a few weeks ago. And while I do have some general concerns about the foundation of that Steelers passing game, because it's really been DK Metcalf and nobody else, I mean, Harmon, you and I have talked about a couple of times, we're more excited to see Darnell Washington rumble down the field than seeing targets to Roman Wilson or Calvin Austin. So that's really just my question at this point. Is this going to be another game where Rodgers continues to build on the performance he did last week, or does everything start to revert back to what we'd seen throughout the majority of the season? But against this defense, and to Boone's point earlier, the way they start to struggle in cold weather, I think it's definitely possible for the Steelers to get another win in after what seems to have been something of a down year for the rest of the Steelers in this offense.
I'll admit that as annoying as the Aaron Rodgers offense has been the last few seasons, there was something, Chris, last week, seeing him rip those go routes and doing the discount double check. It scratched like a little nostalgic itch in the back of my brain. It's like, yeah, that's the guy I remember really loving watching in his prime. Because honestly, as I mentioned, this offense has been pretty gross this year, and it's best exemplified in the fact that these running backs are getting targeted at an absurd rate in Pittsburgh this season. These are the running backs who have run 150 plus routes on the year that are top 10 in targets per route run. Number 1, Christian McCaffrey. Number 2, Kenneth Gainwell. Jahmyr Gibbs, Devon Achane, RJ Harvey, Bijan Robinson, Chase Brown, Tajay Spears, Jaylen Warren, Ashton Genty. Yeah, 2 running backs in the top 10 targets per route run, Kenneth Gainwell and Jaylen Warren. That is outrageous. It shows, again, just what's happening in this offense this year. It's ISO balls to DK Metcalf, which is really not a great fit for his skill set. And then it's these dump offs to Jaylen Warren and Kenneth Gainwell. So many of Aaron Rodgers' passing yards are coming after the catch, primarily because they're just getting it to these running backs. And yet, I will say, it doesn't feel good. It's probably not honorable, but if you need to flex a running back in a full-point PPR situation, Kenny Gainwell kind of profiles as a guy who's going to get those scammy little touches, especially if the Dolphins can give any pushback in this game at all, which theoretically, weather aside, they should be able to do. Again, just a gross game overall, but I think you can scam your way out of some running back touches here if you are absolutely desperate with Kenneth Gainwell and Jaylen Warren. I'm clearly freaking out about having to watch this game on Monday night. We know the people are freaking out there. Let's turn on the panic meter here, the playoff panic meter. Let's decide, are we freaking out or are we not here? Chris, what's something that you think is on the radar of the folks out there that you're either panicking or not panicking about right now?
I think one of those things has to be the Seahawks backfield. And bottom line up front, I'm panicking about Seattle's backfield. Because on the one hand, I keep watching clips of Kenneth Walker turn 1 to 2 yard runs into 5 to 6 yard gains and think the following week, this is going to be the week that he finally breaks off that long run. But we only see those tough runs maybe once or twice a week. And I think there's a sense of confirmation bias that because we saw Walker lead the league in forced missed tackle rate last year, he's going to be that dude again this season. But with Seattle, it's kind of like that Blake Corum, Kyrie Williams discussion, because Zach Charbonnet, he's been a good running back. He's matched Walker in rushing success rate, adjusted yards after contact per attempt. I mean, even all of those advanced metrics, and even on those outside zone concepts that with OC Clint Kubiak coming in, the thing that was supposed to be this boon for Kenneth Walker, Sharps has been better across the board in all those metrics. So again, the Rams backfield discussion just seems to be working in reverse for Walker here, which is impacting his workload. So this week, could Phillip Rivers fall flat? We get a few more drives for Seattle and Walker gets into the end zone. Absolutely, I can see this happening. But could those same things happen to the Colts and it's Charbonnet waltzing into the end zone twice? That's where if I had either of those two running backs, I'd be completely on tilt and panicking about who I'm supposed to start for week 15.
All right, Boone, what's a backfield on your radar here?
I don't think people should panic about the Patriots backfield. And I know it's frustrating to see Ramondre Stevenson out there taking a bunch of work and them not just totally handing this thing over to Travion Henderson. And yet I always bring up the fact that you look back to a guy like Jahmyr Gibbs in his rookie season when he was splitting with another back, and he was able to put up RB11 stats on a per game basis, even though he was only playing around 50% of the time. So Henderson, more than talented enough to come through even in a split like this. And they're going against the Bills this week. So if you have concerns about the offensive line or anything like that, don't worry. Buffalo is a team that you can run on. They're allowing the 5th most fantasy points to running back. So I don't think people need to worry. You can start Henderson as an RB2, and you could even start Ramondre Stevenson as an RB3 flex.
All right, that does it for the panic meter. Let's get into the hurry up offense here. Questions rapid fire as we get out of this one. This first one comes in from Ty Mac. No, never mind. I've got this wrong here. We're going to Joel Gomez here. Alec Pierce, Justin Jefferson, or Kayshon Boutte. And then we got to start 2. Dalton Kincaid, Brenton Strange. Chris, let's pick between Alec Pierce, Justin Jefferson, Kayshon Boutte, and then Dalton Kincaid and Strange here.
Out of those two, or out of the first 3, I'll go Justin Jefferson and Kayshon Boutte. And then out of the starting 2, I'll say Kincaid, and I'll go out of that group. I'll say Brenton Strange there.
All right, this next one comes in from Ryan H. Should I start Rico Dowdle or Amarian Hampton today? Boone, who do you have ranked higher, Rico Dowdle or Amarian Hampton?
I'm going to go with Rico Dowdle on that one. I am concerned about him potentially losing more work to Chuba Hubbard, but we have to be concerned about Amarian Hampton right now because they're ramping him back up, and we saw Kamani Vidal get a lot of work last week in that backfield. So still going with Dowdle, but I have some concern that we could see Chuba Hubbard take over that backfield over the next couple of weeks.
I want to get a breaking news in here. Ian Rappaport of the NFL Network is reporting that Bears wide receiver Rome Odunze, who's officially active, is being ruled out after aggravating his foot injury. So bad news right before kickoff, as Rap Sheet says. I've got Odunze lineups that I'm trying to fix right now. If you guys have them out there as well, he is not going to be playing in this one. So you've got about 3 minutes to fix that one here before kickoff goes live. Somehow, though, we're going to continue with the questions here. This next one comes in from Ghetto Glory. Big money Boone. I need 2 wide receivers and a tight end. Mike Will, Vele, Addison, DK, or Boutte. The tight end is likely or Goddard. So got a lot going on here, Boone, but he's requesting you specifically. So good luck.
We're going with Mike Wilson, and we are going with we're going Addison there. I think Addison could have a good game in that matchup.
And Likely or Goddard, you should probably play Likely. I'll help Boone on that one. All right, last one here.
Trying to
we'll
update
get
the
to.
rankings.
Yeah, I know. It's a lot happening right now. This next one comes in from you see the name on the screen. Sam Darnold or Caleb Williams here. Chris Allen, are we going Sam Darnold or are we going Caleb Williams?
I do like Sam Darnold a bit more. I like how well Williams has shown as a pocket, I'd say, magician in some sense of the word, because he's been able to outrun a lot of the defense and be able to manage the pocket. But I still think Darnold going up against a banged-up Colts secondary is the better option here.
All right, that's going to do it for our show here today. What a ride there at the final morning. You're just getting Boone's shoulder in the shot here right now as he is desperately trying to update his rankings. That's going to do it for this edition of Fantasy Football Live. We're going to be back right here, hopefully with a less chaotic ending every Sunday morning at 11 a.m. Eastern to help you get those lineups set. We're here all week long. You can wake up with Yahoo Sports Daily, and of course you can check us on the Yahoo Fantasy Forecast live on the Yahoo Fantasy YouTube every day at 5 p.m. Eastern. We will see you all next week, and good luck in your playoff matchups.